For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Johnny Perez. I work as the Director of U.S. Prison Programs for the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, where I work with solitary survivors and faith leaders around the country to push for legislative change. And this is actually week 3 of our TAM series. For those who don't know, it's Torture Awareness Month, where we are increasing awareness around torture all month, all year to be exact. And this year, we decided that it was really important to hear directly from the people on the ground who are actually doing the work, and who have put in blood, sweat, and tears into what it takes to be able to change legislation. We've already heard from folks in New York, in their historical legislation, and it was only great that while that was happening, Connecticut was also doing their share of organizing, and also got their legislation, the PROTECT Act, to the finish line. Want to draw some lessons for that. But before we go into it, last year, NearCat partnered with artist Jesse Crimes from Philadelphia, and in addition to our leaders in 10 different states, where we increase awareness around prison violence. And for this conversation, I thought that I'd share a snippet of Raisha, Bivens and both Layton Johnson about what the organizing looked like about a year ago. And then we'll come back and then we'll allow them to introduce themselves, kind of reflect on the video a little bit, and then jump right into our conversations, if that's okay. How does that sound? Good. So I'm gonna ask you how to turn your videos off, and I'm gonna share the screen. Quick second. Optimize. Here we go. Okay.
I see your name. Okay, do me a favor. Wipe your camera screen for me. Wipe your camera screen for me.
Wipe it? Okay.
Clear, no fogginess. There we go. All right, there we go. What's going on in Connecticut, y'all? Talk about it.
All right. Hi, everybody. What's up from Connecticut? It's Raisha Bivens and Layton Johnson here. And we're both committee members with Stop Solitary CT. I got involved in ending solitary confinement when my brother Joshua was incarcerated 3 years ago. And he has schizophrenia. And through my own personal advocacy for him, I realized that there was so much missing in our criminal justice system in terms of people really getting the care that they need. And there are so many people, mental health issues, that are incarcerated and that are disproportionately put in solitary confinement. And as everybody probably knows who's watching, solitary confinement actually exacerbates existing mental health conditions for people who already have it going inside. And for people who don't have existing mental health issues, it can cause it in as little as 7 days. So our campaign is all about developing safe and effective alternatives to solitary confinement. And there's so many states across the nation that have they've drastically removed the use of solitary, or they've removed it altogether, and the rates and the incidences of violence have actually gone down. So our campaign and the focus of our bill, the PROTECT Act, is to eliminate the use of solitary confinement, period, in all Connecticut prisons. And we don't just talk about solitary confinement in terms of putting people in segregation, right? We talk about it. There are prisons in Connecticut, like my brother, for example, was in a prison where he was in his cell 21 hours out the day, just in general population. So solitary confinement is a way of being, and that a state of being. And that is one of the main tenets of our bill, is that leads to depression and degradation for people who are inside doing their time, and that is punishment enough. One of the other components of our bill, the PROTECT Act, is we want to shut down Northern. Northern is a supermax prison in Connecticut that has been deemed cruel and unusual punishment by a judge. And during the pandemic, one of the things that we were really fighting against is not sending sick people to Northern. They were sending people who tested positive with COVID to Northern. And people started to not even speak up about the symptoms that they were experiencing because they didn't want to go there, right? So one of the other major components of our bill is that we are actually out to have a third-party body that corrections is accountable to, similar to the ombudsman. Why? Because police and correctional officials are not good at policing themselves. It does not work. It is not a way that we're going to have a more humane and a more just system. And lastly, we just want to promote, more activities, more out-of-cell time and engagement, period. No one is going to get rehabilitated in a system where they're sitting in their cell all day and they don't have access to programming and treatment that they need to get well and to address the root causes of them being in there in the first place. So I'm going to hand it over to my brother Leighton. He's going to talk more about his own personal story and our demands.
Yes, I think Raisha said it very well. Okay, they probably can't hear me, but thank you everybody for attending. And yeah, I spent close to 5 years in solitary confinement, and you know, the detrimental effects are lasting. I came home with PTSD. The only thing that got me to be able to be somewhat of a survivor is the fact that I had connections with family and people who's advocating for the end of solitary confinement, which started my journey in 2010 once I reached out to the ACLU and Yale, the Human Rights Clinic, and that began my journey to fight to end this atrocity. But I'm one of the I'm like an anomaly, because there's plenty of people who do not have people who are advocating for them, and this
Got 1 minute left.
They're lost. Because, okay, 1 minute. Well, just like I said, our two demands, our two asks is for people to sign a petition on our website at stopsolitaryct.org. Tell your legislators to end solitary confinement. Call your local as well as your state legislators and demand that they pass the PROTECT Act. We support all bills, just like the bill in New Jersey, the bill in New York, the bill all over the country that ends this unjust practice of solitary confinement, whatever name they put on it. I don't care what name they call it, it's still inhumane. And yeah, so we just gonna keep on fighting, and I salute all survivors. Anybody going through it, anybody still inside, anybody who has family, just know that people are out here fighting, man.
That's it. We love you. Keep fighting a good fight. Don't give up. If you're in Connecticut, hit us up. We would love to work with you and push this bill.
So, how was that? Taking a look at that a year later, I'm looking at it and so many things stick out to me. First of all, I'm so proud of the work y'all do. And just looking at it, I'm like, wow, this is, you know, a year later, everything, you know, like the hard work, right? Like, you know, getting there. And, you know, and that's what it looked like, you know, on the ground, you know, and for those who were not aware, who were just tuning in, what you just saw was one small snippet of a nationwide action that we did last year, where we brought in, you know, solitary survivors and other leaders from around the country to talk about their respective, you know, solitary campaigns, and Connecticut was one of them. So what you saw was Instagram Live, 7 minutes a piece, 10 different states. We try to make it do what it do, and it kind of did what it did. You know, so I'm gonna jump right into it. The first thing that sticks out to me is the fact that you were working to close Northern, right? So I'm going to step back, have y'all both react both to the video and also tell us what happened with Northern, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's crazy that that was a year ago. It doesn't even seem like that was a year ago. Yeah, actually, we spoke a little bit about it before we got on. And you reminded me that was June, actually. So it's really significant that, you know, a whole year from last year where we were saying what we wanted to do, and we actually have, you know, done a lot of those things a year later. So it's really makes my heart happy that we got some of those things actually done. Yeah, so we also you spoke to you said when you were speaking about Northern, you said Eastern by mistake, right?
Yes.
And right, and the fact that you said that is not by accident, because when you think about it, our Supermax is called Northern, but the Eastern Penitentiary is where you know solitary began, and so that's also really significant. So we did, you know, get Northern to be shut down. Actually, we just closed this following Friday.
Nice.
So that's great. The PROTECT Act, aka SB 1059, passed through appropriation, Senate, House. We're now waiting for the you know, the governor to sign the bill. So I want to say it's question. You had a question?
No, I said huge congratulations.
Thank you, brother. I want to say I believe this is correct. This is the most progressive bill in the nation because we are saying that 6.5 hours out of cell time a day. That's guaranteed 6.5 hours outside of the cell. So it defines solitary confinement as anything beyond that. And also the other piece that we were speaking about, the ombudsman, ensures a correctional ombudsman is implemented also. It limits solitary confinement, and that's meaning that people can only be in solitary confinement for 72 hours under very strict circumstances. So it's really it really makes me feel good from knowing from being inside that place and starting the journey while I was inside Northern, about 11 years ago, and actually getting that win and some closure for some people, a lot of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So
there's nothing like closing down the prison that once held you, right?
Right.
It's quite an experience. Yeah, let me take it though, Raisa. Can I get your reactions on the video, and then to anything that Layton may have left out as far as the Protect Act?
For sure. Oh my gosh, it gives me chills to watch that video because I think one of the things that it means to be an activist and an advocate on the front line is that you're fighting for something that a lot of people may not believe is possible. And what we do every single time is we go out there and we share what it is that we're intending to create. And then you just, you stand for it, you advocate for it, right? And if I look back at our journey, like that's what we did over again in the face of people saying, oh, that might not happen, maybe, I don't know. And we didn't give up on that vision. And, look where we are now. And the other thing that really stands out to me is, as I shared in the video, I got involved when my younger brother was incarcerated and held in pretrial detention in his cell 21 hours out the day. And through the course of and being a part of Stop Solitary, I was really able to get him successfully out of prison and into a treatment setting. Right. And it happened last September, a couple months after we shot that video. And I was then able to advocate for him to get time served for his charge. And I always acknowledge Stop Solitary as a board, because being in that community and that helped me to be effective with what I was up to for my brother personally. And I know we're going to talk about family members and that stuff later on, but for any people who have loved ones still incarcerated, like the more you get involved in an organized cause to change the system, the more power it will give you. And it's just moving to see how far I came with my brother. He's like the happiest and healthiest he's ever been. He's about to be in my wedding in July. And it's just so moving to see how far we've come as a team. So that's what really stands out to me. And I think, in terms of the Protect Act, we, like Layton said, Northern was shut down. It's a big deal. But, the other main premise of the Protect Act is that Department of Corrections cannot those same conditions that were happening in Northern and other prisons. So with our legislation, even though we started advocating for people to be out of their cells 8 hours a day, as it stands in the bill, it's 6.5 hours out of their cells a day, which I still think, like Layton said, is like one of the most progressive approaches to a solitary bill in the nation. And we looked at it from the perspective of, you have people in general population in their cells 21 hours out the day, they're suffering. DOC isn't going to say that's segregation, but it hurts people. So that's a huge win that now people everywhere in every prison in Connecticut will be out of their cells 6.5 hours out of the day, getting socialization, getting the programming they need, getting the treatment that they need. And it's huge. I think Layton covered everything else though in our bill. Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, there's other things if you want me to get more into it. Limits on restraints and limits on how long people can actually be in solitary. So that's, I will say, in our bill, we put limits on solitary. So the people can be in solitary in 14 days is 72 hours.
Mhm.
right? And they're very specific situations and circumstances where that can happen, right? So we wanted to make sure that you know, it's not a free for all, right? I think we'll probably stick around so it's eliminated completely, but we felt that that was a good place to start. You know, especially with the fact that there's only these very unique situations that people can actually be put in solitary, and otherwise, you know, they could be separated but not isolated. So
No, I have a follow-up question around bill language, you know, and one of the things that I've been asking, you know, all of the campaigns that I'm constantly thinking about, because I think the stronger the bill language is in advance, of course, you know, we limit DOC's discretion to later abuse or find a loophole, you know, to the law. So I guess, you know, and I'll drop this question in the comments so folks who are also in the conversation can also see the direct question. You know, like how important is it to have strong bill language to leverage the inevitable concessions later? And when drafting bill language, you know, what are some of the best practices that you can share with organizers on the ground, you know, about what works, what doesn't work, what could have worked better, and things like that? Just your thoughts on that.
yeah, yes, that's a great question. So I think bill language is really crucial and it's critical. And one of the things that we did really well with Stop Solitary is we worked in partnership with Yale, and specifically the Lowenstein Clinic, which is a human rights clinic out of Yale. And when we were sitting there working on drafting the bill language, we actually had a session where we created from the ground up what our vision was, right? And I think we probably would all say this, I really enjoyed working with the Lowenstein Clinic because they came to us and they really asked us what was our vision if anything was going to be possible in the system. It wasn't like, they did show us research on what had been done before, what's been passed in other states, you know, how other people approached it. But at the end of the day, they respected that we were the advocates and that it really was our choice what this was going to look like. And they drafted it based on our vision for what we wanted to look like in Connecticut. And another critical piece that really helped us is our legislative champion kept saying and kept giving us the space to say, no, draft your bill. I forget the word that he used, but have your bill be as aspirational as possible. And I think that that was very freeing for all of us who are really in this fight to see substantial changes. None of us are in this to see something that's or an incremental change. We want to see the system completely dismantled as it is now so that people actually get care and rehabilitation and are not broken. So it was really crucial working with Yale because first of all, they know how to draft bill language. We know what we want, but we don't necessarily know how to draft bill language. And so they did that piece by piece and made sure to cover the fact that working with Department of Corrections, it could be very nuanced and we don't want to have loopholes or say things in a way where we turn around and our bills pass, but there's some loophole where people are still being tortured. So it was really, really, really critical because we started with the high bar. And even we knew it might come to a point where we would have to make concessions, but we never approached it that way. Because I don't want to go on and on, but yeah, we didn't really approach it that way. And it was interesting when the concessions we did make, we all talked about it and we were in agreement there about very little concessions that we were willing to make so that we would be happy and there would be significant change. So that's what I advise other organizations. If you're drafting bill language, work with professionals if you can, a law clinic. It's helpful so that you're aware of the nuances and that your bill's not going to end up with loopholes and really reflects the vision you have. So, Johnny, can't hear you.
Good. When you see me space out like that's because I'm thinking and I'm talking, and that's good. So you bring up two things for me as you're talking. You know, we're constantly asked by allies, specifically, you know, those who don't have direct experience, how can we best support you? You know, and I think this is a really good example where, you know, folks who, you know, have legal degrees, who, you know, who are able to leverage, you know, their access, you know, are able to empower, you know, folks like, you know, yourself and Leighton who don't have that skill set. You have skill sets to bring to the table. Let's just put that on the table. But however, this particular, you know, piece was able to, like, you know, you're able to synergize in a way in which produced the maximum outcome. And then the other piece is, you said you went in there. with the aspiration, like, hey, the dream bill. And I think the other states and myself and, this conversation on federal level, we know that 15 days is sanctioned by the United Nations around, being sanctioned as torture. But, do we think that we want to now say, forget 15 days and say, no, people should not be in there like 0 days, so that way we start from a conversation of 0 rather than 15, I don't know, just getting, and that's not a question that's sent to an event, but just getting your reactions to that, just some of that thinking. Do you think that we're going far enough, in that respect?
I could touch upon that. I think, just to, kind of, piggyback off what Raisha said, when she said that we started off being as aspirational as possible. And so we didn't have as many constraints on us when we was thinking of what it is we want. We want the most, at time outside of the cell, the most, less restrictions. So that really, I think, other organizations should come at it at that approach. Start high. It can kind of like, when you, just like when you negotiate in deals or whatever, start high, and more than likely when you do get to the results, even if you did have a little bit of concession, it's something that you were able to sit back and sleep at night and be like, well, people are gonna get more freedom. And then next time we come at it, now we're coming back for the gusto, definitely for the gusto, and we have actually now something that we can say, well, this worked. This is what works. So yes, I think that's how the best approach, I would say.
Thanks for that, Layton. There's a question in the comments there. Okay, well, because we're also going to take questions at the end, so folks can feel free to drop their questions in the comments, and we'll aggregate them and ask them at the end. Share, take them at the end. Hold on, let me just copy and paste this here. Okay, so as a follow-up question, right, thinking about allies, as you know, we're the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and we really, highlight and value the voices, the moral voices of faith leaders. We believe that faith leaders are uniquely, positioned to hold our legislators accountable, in a way in which, maybe other folks can't. And I'm curious about, let me drop this in there. Just like, the relationship between, like the unique value that faith leaders and communities, kind of bring to the campaign, and then just thinking about, like, your relationship with, faith leaders throughout the campaign.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just, I think the value of, on these campaigns, having the religious community involved is that they bring like the humanity and the empathy component to it. So then that way, like it makes people have to recognize that, people incarcerated are human beings, and, that they need to be treated as such, regardless or irrespective of the fact that they, may have, either committed or been accused of. Let's think about that, because a lot of people are just accused of crime. That the prison sentence is that's the, so-called, I don't even like to use the word, but that's the punishment. Prison is the punishment. And then once you start to humanize people and think about it like that, even if you got to think about it from a religious aspect of treating people humanely, then I think that really, pushes the needle and helps us get far. I can't hear you, John.
Yeah.
I feel like I just for mute the minute an ambulance goes by.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I want to ask follow-up questions. I know that they were, y'all did a really good job in spreading awareness about the issue, and people can't get behind an issue they don't know about. I mean, from billboards to campaigning right at the Capitol, et cetera. So I'm thinking as a follow-up, do you think that, like you won the moral argument in Connecticut that kind of pushed it over the edge, or was it a combination of some of the organizing? Like what in the end, what do you think moved people to finally say, no, we need to pass this? I guess that's a different question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we definitely won the moral argument.
Mhm.
That this is just it's inhumane. It doesn't matter what your crime is that you committed, you do not deserve to be tortured. You are sentenced to prison and not to torture.
Mhm.
And I think, if you watch, like, a lot of us watched the debate that happened as our bill was in both the Senate and the House. And, there were people who were concerned, or some people who might have opposed it because they thought the bill might have implemented the changes too fast. But all in all, why it got voted out is because this is a human rights issue. And I think everybody and most of the Connecticut legislature really got behind that. And I just wanted to add a couple things to what you asked Leighton about faith leaders. One of the things that was crucial that our lead organizer, Barbara Fair, and Leighton and our team really helped shape is we got the Quakers involved. The Quakers that actually were responsible for starting solitary confinement, and didn't start it with the same intention. They actually publicly acknowledged in op-eds and in different forums that this was not the intention, and that this is just morally unjust and it needs to end. And they have a huge community of people. They showed up to our organizing calls, many of them to our actions. So that was really critical, I think, in reshaping the narrative, because let's be honest, this issue, it disproportionately affects Black and brown people. And when you have a community that is predominantly white, humanizing what's happening to people incarcerated, it does make a difference for even legislators and everybody not to just see this as something that affects brown people. So, oh, we shouldn't care about this, right? Because it's invisible. This issue is still invisible to our society unless we make it visible. And that's what we did, I think, a really good job doing. And the billboards helped, the social media helped, all of that helped. But it was the messaging that was kind of consistent across the board that this is inhumane and we need to stop.
I love all of that. I tell you, I think in the New York campaign, I saw legislators, be moved by, by the issue. But I would say when spoken to by a faith leader, because I don't know, on some level, on all levels, we all have to answer to something greater to ourselves, and what we do in this moment, the decisions that we make, do impact us, and I always say how we treat others says more about us than it says about them, so really, really impactful, and continuing with that theme of allyship and working with folks, working with, social workers and legal experts in Yale, working with people who are directly, impacted, like Leighton and the organizing he's been doing with solitary survivors there. And then also, of course, the voices of family members, and right, so you yourself mentioned you were a family member, and I want to tap into that question, and ask you, what is some advice that you can share with family members who may be on the call, who will be seeing this in the future, about using their voice to push legislation forward? I meet many family members who feel powerless, who feel alone in states, who feel like, hey, this is a big monster and it's just me, just trying to get your reactions to that.
Yeah, I think it's critical. As a family member, it's critical, as I was saying in the beginning, to be involved with the organization that's really pushing this cause. I can remember before I got involved with Stop Solitary, I was saying that I wanted to transform the system. I actually was even meeting with legislators one-to-one. But when I got involved with Stop Solitary, I really felt even more powerful to really make a difference with the issue, because you can't, no man is an island, and you can't really accomplish something gargantuan like legislative changes alone. So if you are a family member watching and you feel powerless at any point, plug into HALT, plug into us in Connecticut. If you're watching in Connecticut, we will support you. We will have your back. And I think that was critical in the way that we ran our campaign. Part of my role was I was the digital organizer, still am the digital organizer with Stop Solitary. So I led our bi-weekly organizing calls. in partnership with board members who showed up, and family members showed up on that call. And we plugged them into the actions that we had, and we always tried to elevate their voice and their story. And I think that that was really critical in the success of our campaign. And it also, we had, you know, a woman, Colleen Lord, she's public, so I don't think she'll mind me sharing, but her Bobby was murdered in solitary confinement. He was known to the system. He was known to have mental health issues. And, you know, they put him in solitary and in restraints, and they sprayed him, and he died. And I think it was really like helpful to her to be plugged into us and to know that even though she went through that pain and that her son was never going to come back, could keep sharing her story to make a difference. And that's what she did at almost every action. Barbara Fair helped organize an action specifically around, I think, the anniversary of his passing. And I think she really felt empowered being able to be a part of this, even though, you know, like I said, the pain obviously would still come up and still be there. And the same for others. We plugged them in the same way, had them speak at our press conference and rallies, and they were on our organizing calls. And I know a lot of family members who started with us, and they were able to eventually get their loved ones out of prison because they were just in this clearing of being a part of something bigger than themselves and not being alone. So it's inexplicable. Like, it's a law in the universe. Like, if you get in there and you're involved with me, you're gonna like accomplish what you want for your loved one if they're still here with us. And that's why I just encourage everyone to get plugged into an organization and not let the pain make you lose power, right? Because your voice is powerful. And if you keep fighting for something, ultimately it's gonna happen. So that's what I want to say to the families.
Yes, turn pain into power. I like that.
Yeah.
In prison, I used to think about how I can turn my rap sheet into a resume, and it turns out
We
the
here.
inside joke. Yeah, you know something. Speaking of having a rap sheet, yeah. So working with faith leaders and also people who've been directly impacted, and for people that are directly impacted, especially the solitary survivors, sometimes it is difficult to operate in a campaign and to be able to do what needs to be done and push legislation forward. So as folks, so I'll drop this question again, just dropping the questions here in a moment in this conversation. Yeah, what can allies learn from your experience in terms of supporting campaign members who are impacted by incarceration? Many other campaigns, ask the same question. I think we should be consistently asking ourselves this question, and see what works, what doesn't work, what can be better, and things like that, what we can duplicate, what we shouldn't do, that kind of thing. So just kind of getting both of your reactions, to that question.
I want to say when we had our hearing last week, well, not the hearing, but the House vote, when we was waiting for the House vote, and they was debating on whether or not to vote for the bill. And some of the people who are opposed to passing this legislation because they may have, maybe either personal issues or whatever, political issues, ties, whatever. One of the people, I'm not going to mention him, but one of the legislators was speaking about the experts, right? He was talking about, well, we should have consulted with the experts so that we can know, because he has a lot of correctional officer friends, and the correctional officers are telling him what really goes on inside and blah, 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 right? And we have this thing coupled with a bunch of other organizations, but specifically with the ACLU Smart Justice Campaign, where we're out here supporting each other's efforts for our bills constantly. I'm at the Capitol actually right now, in Hartford, where there's something called parking lot advocacy, where our presence is here. These legislators see us because of COVID. We can't go in the building, but we have made it where we will stand at that entrance all day, and we'll have flyers, and we'll have conversations with the legislators who may believe that all people who are in jail deserve whatever treatment because they're criminals. So that's what they want to believe. And so I say all that to say that the experts that he was talking about are us. We're the experts on what goes on inside. People like myself who's inside, and knows what really goes on, despite what you know. A lot of the times, some people want to spin what really goes on or only speak on one side. The family members, you know, the advocates are the experts. So what they can learn from us is, you know, to understand that when we talk about the experts, we have to focus on primarily on the directly impacted people, you know, to lead the charge, and because if they're impacted by solitary and mass incarceration. So lead the charge and educate not only about the horrors that, you know, people may not know about, but also what needs to be done about it. Because we know what needs to be done, and that's why we so you know, ambitious about what really needs to be done to make it more humane for people, so that when they come home, they don't come home worse than when they went inside. Because I think that should be the whole purpose of the Department of Corrections, you know, to correct people and help them, and, you know, give them actually help.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Lynn Rice, anything to add?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You know, I think it's critical for Leighton already said it, but I think it's critical for allies to really know that incarcerated people or formerly incarcerated people and people directly impacted should be leading the cause, and to really honor their voices.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I think in every campaign, there's a point where somebody who has been formerly incarcerated or directly impacted, they may not feel heard, and the dynamics of power may not be where they should be, right? I'm just going to speak truth to talk, right? And I think it's important for allies to remember that you need to empower directly impacted people that you're working with. You may have a degree, you may have experience that you bring to the table in terms of advocacy or other components of the fight and what's needed. But you really need to keep holding space for people directly impacted and lead the charge and honor them. And that's what, you know, I think that's it. I think that's it. It's important.
Yeah.
It could get lost when you talk about an organization and structures and dynamics of power. It sometimes gets lost, and we all have to be mindful of our biases. I don't think they're conscious. I don't think no one goes into a movement intending to not empower someone or make them feel diminished, but it does happen, and we have to be mindful of it. People have to be mindful.
I remember. Thank you for that. That was really great feedback. You know, and I mean, I tell you, we hope to take all of these webinars, and maybe find someone who can aggregate all of these jewels that y'all dropping on us. You know, when I was first released, I started working at the Urban Justice Center's mental health project, and that's how I got involved with the whole solitary campaign. I didn't know anything about policy at all, but I knew everything about solitary because I had been there. However, I was walking into a world of acronyms, right? So I found myself on YouTube University at night, on Google, because I didn't want to look dumb, right? But what was empowering to me in that moment, though, you know, and I raised up, you know, Mary Beth Anderson, you know, Jennifer Parrish, Megan Cole-Rothstein, who's now in Massachusetts. They would ask me, do I understand things? You know, does this make sense? Johnny, take a look at this. You know, but in a way in which didn't make me feel like I didn't know what was going on, you know, and then also elicit my responses. And I think there was a level of trust to where, Johnny, what do you think we should do? And they may not think it's gonna fly, but let's see, and let's trust Johnny's judgment. And no, I didn't always get it right, you know, but there were times when I did get it right, you know, and that for me was empowering and almost just that memory came back to me as you were talking. And of course, there's countless ways that we can support people directly impacted, and maybe from state to state and campaign to campaign, but there are some general pieces, you know, and NERCAT, we definitely believe educating folks, empowering folks, you know, compensating folks for their time, you know, eliciting from them, you know, what do you need to get to the next level, you know? Yeah, so anyway, okay. All right, I'm having too much fun with this talk. All right, I like to really talk about the importance of the financial aspects of the campaigns, because honestly, the work doesn't get done unless it gets funded. A lot of us, we do come from a place of either personal experience, or in a place of New Jersey, it might be 6 solid people in the garage who are like, we need to do something about this, you know? But when it comes to campaigns, right, like, you know, a solid question is, you know, what are some key takeaways that foundations and people who financially support this work can learn from the journey of the Stop Solitary campaign, and any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I could touch on that. I believe funders need to continue to support the ones on the ground in any way that's needed. Because the work doesn't stop once when the legislative campaign ends or when we get our bills passed. Like it's so much more that needs to be done, and especially like with us. And I know a lot of us. I know, Johnny, that you could probably relate. I know you can relate. We're abolitionists at heart, right? The whole country is on. Reform is I bet you if we Google reform, a whole list of things that pop up, because reform is kind of like a buzzword, and that's what people, and we have to, get what we can. Abolition is the true goal, though. And to end the injustice system, dismantle the injustice system. And so there's way more to be done, and because there's always some type of caveat or compromise that sometimes is agreed upon, and so we may even need like funding to target many other parts of the system beyond solitary and beyond contracts and things like that. And I'm just talking about not personally, but just all across the country. Organizers and campaigns may need further multi-year funding, and because it's with all encompassing. We're trying to dismantle the system, not just solitary. That's one of the key main things.
Bryce, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's critical. Like a lot of us get involved in this work because we're directly impacted. But without compensation, right, we can't invest our full heart into it. Let me rephrase that. It's very hard for people that have been directly impacted and to not be compensated and to do this work, right? I don't think it works at all. So I think funders need to realize that even though you may not have a 4-year degree, if you have lived experience, you are an asset and you are a leader in the campaign. And that compensation is really important for people to be able to sustain themselves, right? And then like Leighton said, yeah, we accomplished basically what we want in our bill that got passed in the House and the Senate, but there are other pieces that didn't get passed that we have full intentions to go back and do. If we don't keep holding the system accountable, things could revert back to the way that they were. They could introduce solitary by a different name. And so we need to be on the ground, not just with the passage, but I think even with the implementation phase. I had someone incarcerated call me today who knew of the campaign because, reading the papers, watching the news. And he's like, did the governor sign it yet? And I'm like, no, not yet. But I have to tell you, this isn't going to probably get implemented for 1 to 2 years. He's like, can I do a civil lawsuit on this to get them to stop doing solitary, right? So there's people that are still inside that are still impacted until this is implemented, and they need our support, right? So I think it's just important for funders to realize that passing legislation, obviously it was part of our mission, but we need to still be on the ground to see through the complete transformation that we want to happen in the system. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. There's only 15 minutes left. We're gonna have to do a part two. We have to do a part 2 to this. No, and I just want to echo that. I want to echo, the importance of understanding that, we're basically passing the baton here, and this is continuous, and for folks to understand, like, yeah, it's more than, it's more than one way to skin a cat, but we have to make sure that we're not, that later on it doesn't come back, right? Leighton, I see your hand, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, I just wanted to add that also, I believe that campaigns as ours, as New York, Cake, all the campaigns that was actually, won, actually got what they wanted. I believe that the thing now should be to support other organizations who haven't been successful or have been bumping their heads and bumping into the wall and not getting to where they need to be, because now we have proven results.
Yeah.
So I think another thing maybe the funders should think of.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this, I think that where there are limited resources, that is a real decision that funders have to make, do I, support this part of the race if this is a baton, or do I now get somebody to the same finish line and then, do that? And I think, I personally think that, yeah, I think that where there's a will is a way, always. If not, I wouldn't be doing this work, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then, because I think, the PROTECT Act, here it is. A lot of campaigns have worked with other groups who've been working on, similar legislation or, just different parts of the system, And I think, for the organizers, who are working on different parts of the system, what can you share about, collective legislative platforms, and when does it make sense to kind of push for a collection of bills versus one, and your experience on the ground with that?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually went to school for social work, and I concentrated in community organizing, and they talked a lot in school about combining bills. So initially, when it came to our campaign, we had a phone component piece where we wanted people incarcerated to have basically free phone calls. And there came a point where our campaign, where we saw the fiscal note for that, and we knew there was another organization leading that charge, and we decided strategically to have that be out of the bill, right? Not that we didn't care about it, but muddying the waters and stuff like that, it could have actually hurt our chances and our opportunity to have the bill pass. So we strategically made that decision. And I think that this session goes down in history in Connecticut because not only did our bill pass, but the free phone call bill passed, I think making Connecticut one of the first states in the nation to have legislation like that. We also had the Clean Slate Bill passed, which allows for erasure of people's criminal records after a certain number of years. We had a gerrymandering bill passed, which no longer allows districts to count people incarcerated in their districts. And I think we had a few others. And I think the fact that we kept our bill, that we didn't, combine it with other bills, it kept the focus clear, I think, to legislators. Our focus was, while people are on the inside, they need to be treated humanely. This is why we have the ombudsman. This is why we have the time out of cell. This is why no restraints, right? And so they got a clear picture that this is our focus. And then, the other organizations led their charge with this focus, and it really worked. Because like I said, I think 4 more bills got passed. It's like really historical. So I think it only makes sense to combine bills if the philosophy and kind of the focus of the bills is similar, like what, you're trying to tackle a similar issue in the system, right? Otherwise it can get too much for people to kind of take that in and get around it. So
I'll ask a follow-up question. I spent part of my time talking to allies and letting them know that, that solitary is also part of the issue. That, if you're sitting in jail in solitary and you don't have bail, you're going to be sitting in solitary till you come up with the bail. And all of these different ways now we release people from solitary directly into society. So it's also a re-entry issue, and trying to educate, our allies to be able to also mention, how the role of conditions overall plays into their role. Did you find that, was it easier to make the connections for you on the ground with other allies to be able to put that in, where, just some reactions to that, to the degree in which folks helped move it forward, despite the fact that it wasn't necessarily working on?
Yeah, I believe, I agree with you, specifically, like I've worked with, like the CT Bail Fund, and supported their efforts to, get people released. And like you said about people who are coming home, that have been in solitary. So now This is a reentry issue, but it's a public health issue. We work with people in public health, in the public health space. It's all different components. We can't separate it and think that it's just one thing and one. It's like it's together. So yes, I agree that works. That definitely works when we support each other and realize that every piece of this, injustice system matters, that we need to dismantle.
yeah, and just real quick, I'll add, like, this is, Connecticut is big, but there's a small criminal justice community in terms of the people that really are advocating for transformation. And, you know, we were just, Leighton and I were just at a celebration, I think a week ago, for all the bills that passed, you know, Worth Rises with the phone call bill, Clean Slate and the Protect Act. And we, you know, like Leighton said, we all really did support each other. There was no funny business. Everybody got the connection between each issue, and we showed up at each other's events, rallies, spoke out about it. So I think that that was really critical to passing the Protect Act, and really works. So yeah.
Who knew that when you work together, the law of synergy kicks in and we're able to do together what we can't do individually. You know, someone in the comments, we have 8 minutes left, but I do want to put this in. Someone in the comments had posted this. I just recopied it there. Juvenile Justice Alliance also. Yeah. From the process, you know, it says from the process of how you got what you wanted in the legislation working with. Yeah, so folks really got a lot about, you know, how you partnered with, you know, the Law Center at Yale to be able to push this forward. You know, are there things, you know, like what really works, what could have makes it possibly work better? Or let me ask you another way. For campaigns that are not working with law, you know, centers or maybe law clinics, you know, any advice on engaging them, you know, any feedback at all?
Yeah, I think, did you want to go, Leighton? Sorry. I think starting definitely with what your vision is, if anything is possible in the system, like you got to come from this place, because we're always going to push for a vision that people may think is impossible or might be impossible. That's where I think I encourage any campaign to start from, and then also do research, right? Because a lot of times when you do have a vision, there might be other states that have implemented in some way or have been successful with it in some way. And you can compare and contrast what works or what fits with your vision by looking also at research and seeing what people have done and what they've been successful with and what they've been able to accomplish before. So I think that's the advice. And also, you know, I think you have to work really well with your legislative champion. If you have a good legislative champion, they're gonna, not that they're gonna guide you on the legislation, but they're gonna guide you on where to come from to be effective, and they can be supportive in that sense. And yeah, that's, I think, my advice. I got to work with a lobbyist, which, you know, funders out there really made that possible for us. And I think that they were really crucial in helping us navigate just the whole legislative process, in addition to the language of the bill and what we should do in that space. So yeah.
Well, I have to say, I'm just like super proud and honored, you know, to you know, be engaged in this work with you, even you know, in whatever degree, in any degree. You know, I think that, you know, there's, yeah, when one of us comes up, we all come on, like the tide kind of like raises together, and it really feels good to have such a big national movement. 18 different states, you know, all have legislative, you know, active campaigns, all at different proximities to the finish line. Some of us are waiting for signatures, others have it signed already, others are gonna get the signature, you know, and, you know, we believe the tipping point is 27 states, I believe, you know, and we're almost there, you know. We gotta, you know, well, 27 states that actually passed, you know, and we've seen, was it 2019, we saw 78, 79 pieces of legislation introduced, you know. There's like a lot of momentum. We want to keep this momentum going, you know, so you can expect a call from me, you know, and others to be able to, you know, really invest in the leadership of other states that are you know, want to get to a place where they're waiting for a signature, you know. And for the other pieces that you're going to go back to, you know, the fight continues. You know, I think about it as, you know, to Lane's point, I'm an abolitionist too. And I believe that we can live in a society that does not have prisons, and we can have a different mechanism of accountability. I do believe that we're not there yet. We're kind of like in the middle of the movie, you know? So like, what would we do with the people that are there now while we work toward that? You know, while we close down prisons like Northern and Rikers, and there's a bunch of, close down the DC jail, close down all of these places one by one, if you will, you know? So yeah, just like really honored and humbled to be working with you all. And yeah, at 1:56, if there's any other questions, folks can drop a, you know, a last minute burning question in the comments before I go around and ask Layton and Raisa to share any last minute thoughts. But yeah, I'll mention that, the federal organizing, around solitary, has been going for a while. And now I think that we're in a place where we're holding President Biden accountable, to his legislative promises of ending solitary. But with that, it should be a ways to also incentivize states to, to reduce their footprint on solitary, and to kind of take the world lead as world leaders, to say, hey, we're also not going to torture people in the United States, as many other countries, agreed on from the United Nations. So keep y'all posted on that. And I'm gonna ask Raisa and Layton to just give some last minute thoughts. And then I'm gonna close this out. And I'll drop my email in the comments for those who don't already have it. Thanks. Go ahead. Anyone can go first.
Yeah, I just want to say, I definitely, the feeling is mutual, brother. I learned a lot from you, from being around you, seeing how you, operate, and just like for anyone out there that's, that's fighting or thinking about fighting and not knowing what to do, just, I think what Raisa said about research is great, bro. Just like you said when you did a lot of the, you said you was a YouTube and Google guru, right? I think I'm similar in that aspect of doing research and seeing what works, what worked in this campaign that we need to implement. Even if you're not a campaign, if you're just a family member trying to support someone that that's inside going through these things. I think the thing is to align yourself with people who may have already been successful, and just do research, just keep fighting, don't give up, never give up.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you, Johnny, for having us here. It's been just so great to talk and to share and to hopefully make a difference and encourage all the other organizers out there watching. And, the biggest thing I want to leave people with is just don't give up, right? If you just keep being unstoppable, like the tides will turn. And if anybody, wants to reach out to us because you want some advice given our success, I think we had a really powerful structure, Layton, the education coordinator, me, the digital organizer, and Barbara Fair, the lead organizer. And it was like a trifecta of power in addition to our board members who were there on the front lines. And it really is a structure that worked and provided a way for people to engage. So we're here if you want support, you want to talk, and we're not stopping. We do want solitary eliminated completely in Connecticut. And we're not going to stop until that happens, until there's true transformation in the system. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Well, you have our continued support. Peace, and I'll see y'all on email. All right, bye, y'all. Take care.